What if the greatest threat to executive performance isn't stress, burnout, or market volatility? What if it's impaired judgment? Most conversations about sleep focus on energy and productivity. Today, we're going to challenge that narrative. Sleep isn't primarily about feeling rested, it's about protecting the quality of executive decision making because every strategy, every negotiation, every difficult conversation, every crisis response depends on one thing: the condition of the brain making the decision. So let's talk about why we've been asking the wrong question. Organizations often frame sleep as an employee wellness issue. Executive leaders should frame it as strategic leadership capability. And why getting more sleep isn't the real objective. The real objective is we need the cognitive downtime. We need that time when our brain is asleep to clear out the debris, which is the lymphatic system. I'm not going to get real technical about it, but that's the system in the brain. So when we sleep, especially during deep sleep, that's when that gets cleared out of the brain. It helps us to stay calmer so we have more patience. We're not reacting so emotionally. It also gives us cognitive resilience because our workload is not going to decrease. Our resilience is. And the only way to obtain that is to have a good sleep optimization routine. And this is why it's important for executives. We have to remember that everything that we do, just our daily lives in general, and in addition to the fact that we are responsible for millions of dollars, thousands of employees, it all functions through the brain. So if you're not getting adequate sleep, you're already operating on decreased cognitive capacity. And that's definitely not good for you. It's not good for your employees, and it's not good for the organization. And over time, not only will you have diminished decision quality, but it can lead to health problems that can injure leadership before you are ready. Executive judgment is the true performance metric. I know we have all these KPIs and they're looking at finances and capital allocation and productivity, and all of those things are necessary and it needs to be measured. But what are we doing to measure our executive functioning, our executive capacity? If you don't have a recovery infrastructure, which I'll talk about that a little bit later, if you're not getting the appropriate sleep, which is foundational to a recovery infrastructure, how are you strategically running your company? How are you strategically running your life? And are you running it in survival mode, or are you running it as stewardship? And I'm going to be speaking from personal experience, although there's plenty of research that I've done, the McKinsey research, some other research, Harvard Business School, they have occupational research that talks about how foundational sleep is. But I was at a point in my life where I was in invisible burnout and I did not know it. And I was operating on survival mode instead of in stewardship. I didn't get any sleep. I was constantly thugging it out. Although I studied this work and I was talking about it and preaching about it, I was not living it. And it wasn't until I slowed down and started living executive longevity, and living that is having a recovery infrastructure, becoming more expansive in your thinking. I did not realize that I was in survival mode. I was making urgent decisions. My life and my business, I was treating it like I was the main firefighter and putting out fires, putting out fires, putting out fires. I didn't have the tolerance for ambiguity. I didn't have the tolerance to look and say, oh, you know what? This is a challenge. How can we handle that? Because I constantly defaulted for what was familiar, and what was familiar wasn't even working. But I didn't have the bandwidth to even realize that. Let's talk about decision quality as a competitive advantage. Again, what is your decision quality? If you're not getting adequate sleep, if you are not eating, which means you're constantly running on cortisol, um, caffeine drinks, energy drinks, garbage diet, drinking alcohol to go to sleep at night, late nights, travel stack, no rest in between, no cognitive resets in your day. What do you think the quality of the decisions that you make for a multi-million dollar organization is going to look like? And on paper, initially, it looks good because sleep deprivation is kind of like a chronic illness. It starts off slow. You get little signs here and there. Oh, my blood pressure's up. I have a little bit of a headache, but nothing big. And it just goes on like that year after year, sometimes even decades. And then one day, all of a sudden, the same decisions that felt right that you were making because you defaulted to familiarity because you had such diminished capacity and you weren't aware of it, you end up halting your leadership immediately. And it's kind of like, oh, my blood pressure's a little high. Okay, I'll address it. Sometimes I'll take my blood pressure medicine. Sometimes I won't. Sometimes I'll eat healthy. Most times I won't. I'll try to get sleep. And then you get a heart attack and a stroke. And it was all because of little inconsistent, poor quality decisions that built up over time. Small little judgment errors here compound into significant and sometimes catastrophic effects. And that goes downstream throughout the entire organization. What are the organizational consequences of poor decision making? I want to talk about why experience alone cannot overcome cognitive fatigue. And initially, it feels like it does, especially if you've been doing this for a while. You know, it's familiar. It's like riding a bike until you get so comfortable, or it's like driving a car. When you first get the car, you're making sure you're checking the lights because when you're getting a car and part of the driving test, they tell you walk around, turn on the lights, you know, make sure all your lights are working, make sure your indicator lights are coming on. And we do all these things. I did all that when I was 16. Now I hop in my truck. I'm not checking to see if the brake light is working or if the indicator lights are working. You know when I know it's not working? When a cop is behind me and saying, hey, do you know your brake lights aren't coming on? So we need to think about that. How those small little errors and how we've gotten so experienced. Sometimes my mind is so cloudy that I can even drive home and not even think about how I got home because I've driven that way so many times. And this is where I experience alone can't overcome cognitive fatigue. And sometimes you're so distracted before you know it, you're in a motor vehicle collision and you don't even know how it happened. If judgment is one of the most valuable assets a leader possesses, then we need to understand what protects it. So let's talk about what sleep actually does for the executive brain. Sleep is an active biological process that restores the systems responsible for high quality leadership. Sleep is responsible for memory consolidation. We get that through the REM cycle. And this is why they talk about sleep duration. But what I'm starting to realize is sleep duration is good because you need a certain amount of sleep in order to get into the REM cycle, in order to get into your deep sleep for memory consolidation and learning integration and for emotional regulation. And like I said, while we're in that deep sleep, the brain is clearing out all of the plaque that's in the brain. So if you're not in deep sleep long enough, a lot of that plaque isn't cleaned out and it builds up. And it builds up into what we call cognitive impairments, your dementias, your Alzheimer's. And you don't have cognitive flexibility because your patience is so low. You're barking at everybody because you have not had any sleep. I don't know what the term is. I know what it is when you haven't eaten and you get angry and they call it hangry. I'm not sure what it is for sleep, but it's similar to that. Your attention and your focus is off. Your ability for strategic thinking is gone because you're fatigued. You can't be creative when you're fatigued because you're going to default to the familiar. And familiar is not always creative. And then we have to realize that it helps with our neural pathways in the brain, the decision making networks. Those are the neural pathways that we use. And while we're sleeping, they're cleaning themselves out so that we have memory consolidation. But if we're not sleeping long enough with good quality, those networks are impaired. So it's kind of like having a cell phone, you charging it up, but you don't charge it on full. You charge it, it stops at 50%, but you want to get 100% of activity on it, but the battery's already at 50%. And that's how a lot of us are during our day. We're already waking up at 50%. We're not fully recharged at all. The brain isn't shutting down during sleep. It's preparing you for tomorrow's leadership challenges. So again, when you don't have a rested brain, which sleep is foundational for that, what is the next day going to look like? And that cycle continues over and over again. And a lot of people make the mistake that, oh, I'll catch up on the weekends. But actually, you don't catch up with sleep debt. I've only seen one study that says that you can catch up sleep debt, but that's only if you have mild sleep debt. But if you're going to bed late, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, getting up at 4 or 5 o'clock every day, there's no amount of sleep you can get on the weekend that's going to make up for that type of sleep debt throughout the entire week. It's just not possible. So I'm going to stop right here. And I just want to talk about the Executive Longevity Lab. And this is a 45-day immersive experience where I will be taking leaders through so that they can build their executive capacity by shoring up their recovery infrastructure, enhancing their cognitive resilience, which also leads to greater leadership sustainability. It starts Monday, July 6th. The link will be below in the show notes. If you follow me on any of my social medias, it's under Executive Longevity on LinkedIn and Substack. It's in the bios there. If you follow me at Ask Nurse Sherrie on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, it's in those bios there, and it'll also be below in the show notes. I cannot wait to see you in the lab. This is going to be fun. I'm going to come on once a week. We're going to talk about what worked for us, what our challenges are, what we want to do better. You're going to leave with a whole blueprint, a leadership blueprint, so that you can continue this journey as we leave the 45-day immersive experience. And I'll have implementation tools that you can use throughout the week that can assist you on the journey. So definitely sign up. It is going to be fun. You're going to enjoy it. We're going to end the summer off with a bang, and you're going to go into quarter 3 already ready to lead. Okay, let's talk about the executive judgment trap. Sleep deprivation doesn't usually make leaders feel incapable. It often makes them feel confident while quietly degrading performance. So, a lot of times, again, there's reduced self-awareness. Because you're leaders, because you're used to thugging it through, that's what I used to do, thugging it through, because you're used to being super resilient, being dependable, being available, you don't even realize that you're starting to diminish. And the symptoms are so vague that you don't even recognize it unless you know what the signs are. You're pretty much oblivious to it until it's the out loud burnout that everybody recognizes. It starts with the same decisions that you used to make take longer for you to make. The same tasks that you used to take you an hour now takes 2 hours. You get in meetings, you don't have any tolerance for what's going on. You just want to get through it. Let's just put out this fire. You don't want to talk about ideas. You just have no tolerance for it. Your joy has gone. And those are just little things. And a lot of times people either think that I'm just tired of this, I just need a vacation, I'm just getting older. Um, they know it's something, but they can't put their finger on it. But that's actually the earliest signals of decision degradation. Increased impulsivity. Like I said, you're in firefighter mode, you're in survival mode. Hey, I just want to get this done, get through this day, get this over with, get to the weekend. I just want to get to my happy hour at 5 o'clock. So I just want to get it done. Let's get it done now. We're not thinking about, is this the right step to take? I know we've been doing this a lot, but are we getting the results that we want? Maybe we need to try something different, but you don't have the bandwidth for that. Risk assessment changes. Is this the same? Are the benefits still outweighing the risk here? Are we seeing any changes? Are things better or worse? But you're not aware of that because, again, you're operating at a diminished capacity. You have narrower thinking and less innovative problem solving. You don't want to solve problems. You just want to get it done. You just want to put the fire out. You're more reliant on habit than ambiguity. And a lot of us throughout our lives, not just in business, just even personally, we usually default to the familiar, not realizing the fact that we have less curiosity about life in our business and our leadership is a sign that something is missing. Either we're going through an identity drift or we're not fully recovered. And 9 times out of 10, we're not fully recovered, especially if you're like me and you're in the sandwich generation where you're a grandmother, a mom to an adult, and you have an aged parent who has a lot of medical needs. And you're running a business. And you may still work a 9 to 5. And like me, I work a 9 to 5, I'm in school, and I run a business. And I help take care of my mom. And I'm in a relationship. And I have a grandson who's very active and in high school and has a lot of things going on. So if I am not intentional about my rest, it is very easy for me to start putting out fires instead of stewarding my executive capacity. You have greater susceptibility to confirmation bias. It's like you want everybody to agree with you. And as a leader, that's great, but that's really ego inflation. Everybody should not be agreeing with you. But if you don't have the tolerance or you haven't created the culture, excuse me, for dissent, for different opinions, then you're just going to default to what's familiar. This is how it's always been done. This is how we've always done it. And we're not going to change. And sometimes what worked 5 years ago, even last month, may not work now. Maybe the market is changing. Maybe we are in a mild recession. What has changed that makes this decision no longer the right decision? But we're too degraded in our thought process because we're under recovered to even think on that level. Here's a question I have. Have you ever looked back at a decision and realized you were operating on far less cognitive capacity than you believed at the time? Let me ask it again. Have you ever looked back at a decision and realized you were operating on far less cognitive capacity than you believed at the time? That has been the last couple of years for me. And I did not realize it until I stopped traveling this April. And I actually got to be home and I actually didn't work for 5 weeks. And I actually realized that I was in fight or flight for the last couple of years. Was I productive? Hell yes. But it cost me a lot. I made a lot of poor financial decisions because I was in survival mode and I was not in stewardship. And I think a lot of times if we think back, we make a lot of decisions because we are consistently and chronically under recovered. Sleep as a leadership strategy. Let's talk about that. The highest performing organizations protect decision quality, not simply productivity. We got to remember our entire lives are made through our decision quality, our brain. So if we're not sleeping, if we're not getting good restorative sleep, if we're not eating great anti-inflammatory, highly nutritious meals, if we are not moving our body, if we don't have infrastructures in place, cognitive resets, nervous system deregulation times, if we don't have all of that, any type of stress management in place, we will not be able to function at our highest level. And as leaders, that is important. So, in order to be productive, you have to have good recovery. A recovery infrastructure helps with your cognitive resilience. Let me tell you, when I was in invisible burnout, and it was borderline almost full burnout, but I didn't realize it until I got home and I started being intentional about my recovery infrastructure and started getting up and within an hour getting outside and having a cognitive reset and resetting my circadian rhythm, because I was working nights too, which is horrible on our system because you're working against your circadian rhythm. I realized, wow, I can actually think clearly. I didn't have constant inputs all the time. I was able to follow up. That was the leak in my business because I was so busy. I didn't have cognizant, the cognitive bandwidth to even follow up with people in a way that was timely or efficient. So having a good recovery system infrastructure helps with cognitive resilience. And it helps sustain high performance because I still am learning my body. So for some people, the 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep, 7 to 9 hours, I should say, is great and is best. My body, I'm realizing, works biphasically. When you have a job, that does not normally work. Back in the 1800s and even in the early 1900s, before the Industrial Revolution really hit and people didn't have to go to factory jobs, most people would go to sleep when the sun went down between 7 and 10 p.m. They would sleep for about 4 hours. They would get up for 1 or 2 hours, write, read, maybe just lay in bed quietly. They always say that's the God hour, and I believe it. And then they would go back to sleep for 4 more hours, and their bodies were totally rested. And if you don't have a job to go to, that works perfectly. But what I noticed with my body when I went back to work is I would go down beautiful because I have a good nighttime routine in place. So I go to bed about 8, get up about 12 or 1, then I'm up. Well, if I go back to sleep at 3, I have to get up at 4:30. I'm not getting good rest. So I noticed that I had to institute naps throughout the day in order to get my 8 hours. And my body and my energy still functions well as long as I've gotten 7 hours of sleep. I just noticed that for me, I can get them interrupted and still function and function at high quality. And of course, I track my data, my metrics, and all of that. So I'm able to accurately say that. I also, having a recovery infrastructure is how I build my executive routines. For me, I think better in the morning. I get my best work done in the morning. So I save my hardest tasks and my follow ups for first thing in the morning after my cognitive reset, because that's when my brain is the freshest. I will set cognitive resets in the middle of the day just to break up the day, whether it's a hard meeting. I may not even have had a meeting, but just to stop, because our brains carry residual. So we can't keep getting input and pings and responding to text and Slack messages and emails and social media and content creating and doing all the things without a stop in between. And a cognitive reset for me is I'll just go for a walk, no podcast, no music, just silence. Or if it's now, I'm in Florida in the middle of the day, it's hot. I will actually stop, getting my massage chair, set it for 15 minutes, close my eyes, and just relax my mind and my body. And I actually build that into my routine, and I'm actually more productive. Or if I did not get adequate enough sleep at that night, that's when I actually take my 30-minute nap, or as my friend Angel affectionately calls it, the siesta. So I will take a little mini siesta, and I'm more recovered. I'm able to think clearer, and I'm able to be more productive. And that recovery infrastructure is part of my executive routine. If you're leading in an organization, that actually creates a culture of wellness in your organization. And leaders, it's kind of like parents. You lead by example. So if you're coming into the office wired and tired, pumping down caffeine drinks, in meetings, biting off people's heads, never take a lunch, and running out the door, rushing home, not getting sleep, doing work at home, and you're on 24 hours, that is the culture that you bring into your organization. Even if you didn't say it out loud, even if you didn't send out an email and a memo, they're watching. Your employees are watching you, and this is what they see, and this is what they mimic. And the ones that don't want to mimic it, to realize that that's not a culture they want to embrace, they're either going to have presenteeism, where their body's there and their mind is somewhere else, or they're already planning their exit strategy. So we want to create cultures of smart recovery instead of chronic exhaustion. And chronic exhaustion in an organization also leads to poor retention. Sleep is also governance. Like I said, it should be evaluated with risk management and leadership development. How are you going to develop your leadership skills? How are you going to be an effective manager if you can't even govern your own body? If you can't even say to yourself, hey, I need to take 10 minutes here. I need to do some box breathing. I need to downregulate my nervous system. I need to stop here, and we need to take a company-wide lunch. And I need to fuel my body with nutritious food. If you can't govern your own physical body, how are you going to effectively lead an organization where thousands of people depend on you, where millions and sometimes billions of dollars are on the line? And what kind of leaders are you developing? And of course, as a leader and as a CEO, you may think, oh, that's great. But again, all of that leads to chronic depletion. It leads to presenteeism. They're there, but they're not. You got zombies on the front lines making decisions. You got poor retention because, especially with Gen Zs, I just got asked today by a LinkedIn editor to respond to, because a lot of these Gen Zs feel guilty taking off of work, where baby boomers do not. And I was raised by baby boomers. So it was always work hard, hustle and grind, and, taking time off is for the weak. And the Gen Zs, some of the millennials, not all of them, but a little bit of them, and the Gen Zs, that's not them. They're quick to tell you that their mental health is on the line. This is not fit for them. So because baby boomers are now the CEOs and the leaders, they feel guilty taking time off. They feel guilty actually instituting their vacations. Because I know I'm a Gen X. I come from a generation where, and even some of my girlfriends, Oh, I have so much vacation time that if I used all my vacation time, I would take a year off from work. That's insane. So we have to take steps to protect ourselves. So here's some practical takeaways that I want you to take with you. Protect a consistent sleep schedule, even on the weekends. You want to stay within 30 to 60 minutes of your sleep time. And I know sometimes for me, and mine vary too, I'm still working on that. And I know for me, and I've been, like I said, I track my body, I track my data. My actual sleep window is actually 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. But my when I do go to work, it's actually anywhere from 6 to 9 a.m. So that's not a good bedtime. So my bedtime uh, timing is still slightly off. So I kind of go for the middle ground, which is usually 9 to 10 p.m. So I can get that in. But you want to keep a consistent bedtime schedule. You want to avoid making major strategic decisions after prolonged sleep restriction whenever possible. And that's something that I had to get intentional about, because when you're in firefighting mode, every decision seems like a major decision. Everything is urgent. Everything needs to be done right now, right away. And I had to start prioritizing. I now have something that I will be introducing in the lab, but as part of my signal framework, but I scan. And I actually do this now. I get up in the morning. First of all, my AM routine, that is non-negotiable. You have to legit be dying. And my family knows this. If you are not dying, it is not an emergency. Your incompetence or your lack of diligence, whatever you got going on in your life, your finances, whatever, that's not going to become my emergency. My first hour of the morning is for me and God. So after I pray and I meditate and I journal, I will actually look at my to-do list and ask myself, what do I have the capacity to do today? If my sleep was raggedy, and it sometimes is because I'm menopausal, then I look at what are the 2 to 3 priority things that must be accomplished today, and everything else gets put on for tomorrow. I am not thugging out my days anymore. If there is a major decision that needs to be made, I make that first in my peak early morning window when my brain is fresh, and then I immediately stop and go into a cognitive reset. So if you can, avoid doing that. Schedule high consequence work during periods of peak mental performance, and that is something I live by. Later in the day, I'm not making any major decisions. No, no, ma'am, no, sir. So if it's something major that you want me to address, you get on my calendar for first thing in the morning. After that, the rest of the day, it's done. I'm not, don't talk to me about it. View recovery as an investment in your leadership capacity. When I started doing this, like we'll come with you to you, and always this is the investment. This is a priceless investment. Your mental capacity and your physical health is a priceless capacity. Sleep is not a reward because you finish work. Recovery is not a reward because you finish work. A lot of people treat weekends and vacations as, oh, okay, I did a good job at work. I thugged through. I didn't get any sleep all week. I was up 24 hours a day like a robot. So now I get to reward myself with sleep. No, you don't. That's a daily system that you need to have in place. It is not a reward. That's the investment. When you have good sleep, you have a good recovery infrastructure. That is the investment that you're making into your life. You will see your productivity, you will see your energy, your capacity will increase by leaps and bounds. That's the daily investment. You want to model healthy behavior so it becomes part of your organization's culture. Like I said, the organization, you're like the parent and they're the kids. And they don't listen to what you say. They're going to look at what you do. So again, if you're coming in wired and tired, throwing down coffee, caffeine drinks, can't nobody talk to you before 10 o'clock, You're in meetings, you're biting off everybody's heads. You don't want to hear any dissent. It's your way or the highway. You're going to get a lot of presenteeism. You're going to get poor retention. But if you come in after a good night's sleep, and even if you come in and your sleep was garbage and you just say, hey guys, we have this meeting today. You know what? Today's not a good day for that. Let's put that off for another day. If it's not something urgent that's not time sensitive, you know, and just be upfront. Just say, hey, it's time, it's break time. And actually make sure that they're taking their breaks. I come from the healthcare system, and it's sad to say, but outside of California, they don't really care if you get a break. And I'm not saying, of course, you're not going to try to take a break if somebody's life is on the line. I work in the ICU, but it could be just a regular normal day, but they're short staffed and they don't really make any concessions. It's just, oh, sign the book. You didn't get a break today. Oh, sign the book. That's not the kind of culture you want to have. You don't get the kind of assistance you need from your employees. I know coming from the healthcare background, this is what happens. Oh, we're short staffed again tomorrow. Will you like to come in? No, because you burnt everybody out so bad today. They didn't get to eat. They didn't get to go to the bathroom. They didn't even get to get a cup of water for the whole 12 hours they're there. No, they don't want to come back. And some of them call off for the next day, making it more short staffed because they're so depleted and they need that extra day to recover. That is not what we want to model in our organizations. We want to model, hey, it's time to take a break. Oh, you're having a rough morning? Take 15. Let's do some box breathing. Let's go somewhere quiet and quiet our brains. It's lunchtime. Let's have nutritious lunch. And one thing I would say, coming from a healthcare organization, I always found this to be amusing, sadly amusing. There's been a few places I've been to that I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. And they want to reward us and bring us in food, and they want to reward us with pizza and donuts. Really? You can come up with a fruit plate, a vegetable plate, a charcuterie board with healthy options on it. We have vending machines with high sugar sodas and salty chips. But we're healthcare. I don't know what kind of health that is and what kind of care it is. And I'm just going to leave it there because I could say more. So let's just start modeling healthier habits in the organization. And that trickles down to the culture in the organization. The biggest decisions of your career will rarely depend on how hard you worked yesterday. They'll depend on how clearly you think today. Sleep isn't about comfort. It's about protecting the quality of every decision your organization depends on. Leadership isn't measured by how many hours you stay awake. It's measured by the quality of judgment you bring when you are awake. Remember, you're more productive when you're rested. So staying awake for 22 hours, making poor decisions because your decision quality is bad because you're under recovered, you're not getting any bonuses for that. If today's conversation challenged the way you think about executive performance, there's much more to explore. The Executive Longevity Lab is a community for leaders who want to extend not only their lifespan, but also their health span, cognitive performance, resilience, and leadership capacity. Together, we examine the science behind sustainable high performance and translate it into practical strategies for executives and organizations. If you're ready to lead with greater clarity, resilience, and long-term impact, I'd love for you to join us. And if you found value in today's episode, please subscribe to Longevity Unlocked. Follow the podcast on your preferred platform and share this episode with a colleague or a fellow leader. Every subscription, follow, and share helps us bring evidence-based conversations on longevity, leadership, and executive performance to a wider audience. Until next time, remember, your greatest leadership asset isn't your title, your experience, or your strategy. It's your ability to make wise decisions consistently. protect your brain, protect your judgment, and you'll protect your leadership. Until next time, guys.